It wasn't that long conversation. Like, "Hi, Mom, love you." That's on Thursday. Saturday, I am in my room and I get a phone call. I was sleeping. My sister calls me and she's crying, and she's crying in a way I never heard her cry before. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And she says, "Mom was in a plane crash." And I'm like, "Wait, what? What do you mean she was in a plane crash?" My sister calls me and she's crying, and she's crying in a way I never heard her cry before. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And she says, "Mom was in a plane crash." And I'm like, "Wait, what? What do you mean she was in a plane crash?" "Mom was in a plane crash." I'm like, hold on, let me call you back. So I hang up. And I call my dad, and I'm like, "Dad," and I'm like, "Can I speak to my father?" And I was like, "Dad, what's going on?" And it's just like, "Your mom was in a plane crash." I'm like, "Where? How?" "Okay, in Port Harcourt." And they say there are 7 survivors, and she's one of the 7. "How is she? Where is she? We don't know. How is she doing? I don't know. Is she burnt? Is she maimed? Is she what? You know?" He's like, we have no idea. Now, what made it extremely painful, if it's to backtrack, she had come to this. Last time I'd seen my mother alive was in June of 2005. They had come for summer. And it's so weird, because it's funny how God does this thing, because when she was leaving, she went in through security, and she'll come back and she'll go, "Bye, Jim." I'm like, "Bye, Mom." She did it like 6 times. She'll come back, "Bye, Jim." And I was like, what's wrong with this woman? You know, she'll keep coming, go, "Bye, Jim." She did like 6 times. And that was the last time I'd ever physically see my mother alive, was in June 2005. November, she comes to the States, and I had this speaking engagement. I was supposed to preach at a conference, and she was preaching in Dallas, and I was in Tulsa. And I had a decision: do I go see my mom or stay and preach? And I thought, well, December's around the corner. I'm going to see my mom in 2 weeks anyway, so I won't go. So my sister goes. So I don't go see my mom, and I stay to preach. And she dies in December, and I'm thinking, I could have gone. But I mean, my mom was really excited that I stayed, you know, to preach. She's like, "My son is preaching, he's not around. This is why he didn't come." But fast forward to when my dad says, "We don't know, we're going to try to find stuff out." And I'm just like, okay. So I hang up. And up until that point, I kind of had the quote unquote perfect family life. I mean, I'd seen God bless us, and we come from humble beginnings. We were okay. And nothing, my father grew up in a perfectly normal home. Father loved mother, they loved each other, strong familial bond. Everything was okay. And this was not part of the plan. You know, these are the things you hear about that happens to other people, but not to us. You know, she was preaching. She wasn't going, she went around, all her whole life was God. And you know, it's like, how can this happen? When she's going, she went to preach. And, you know, this was not ever in the narrative. It was that group. I tell people that when you lose a parent, it's a group that you hope never to join. It's an exclusive group you don't want to be a part of. But when you do join that group, then you feel like you have people. And it's like, there's a connection that most people can never, you know, understand. So I'm sitting there not knowing. So she was in a plane crash. How is she? Is she burnt? Is she maimed? Where is she? And being so helpless because I'm in a different country, in a different continent, you know. And at the time, my mother was in Port Harcourt. My father and my younger sister were in Lagos, and my sister and I were in the States. So literally, there's no family around her at this time. And I'm thinking, and I remember that whole time I'm sitting in my dorm room, and it's crazy how I know the impact of how emotions can affect you physically and pain. Because in that 2 days or that one day, I lost weight. I was working out, I was big, and literally 6-8 hours, everything literally just, I shrunk. I was in my room, just lost. I would pray, and I would try to pray, and words would fail me, and then I would cry, and then I would cry till I couldn't cry anymore, and then I would pray. And just waiting. I was praying that she was okay. You know, when you make God's promises, "Lord, if you just keep my mother, I promise. Lord, if you just, you know," and I didn't know, at times, you don't even know what to pray. You don't know how to pray. And you're waiting, just waiting, not knowing. And I didn't sleep. Obviously, I did sleep. I was up all night praying and waiting. And Sunday morning, I had a family friend who was in Tulsa at the time, and she's even gone now. Wow. She calls me and she says, "Get your sister, come downstairs, you're going to my house." I said, "Why?" She goes, "Just come downstairs." I'm like, "Mm-mm." You know that something's happening, and they tell me to come down. I'm like, I call my house. I'm like, let me talk to my father. And I go, and he gets on the phone and I say, Dad, have they found Mom? And he goes, yes. I go, how is she? And he says, she didn't make it. And you know when literally like a sledgehammer just goes boom in the middle of your chest. And you know those epic moments in movies where everything slows down and the main character, your knees give out and you just crumble to the floor. Literally, that's what happens. Like I felt like boom, and I just collapsed on the floor. And I didn't know what to say, and my mind is trying to process, what do you mean she's gone? And he's like, listen, I haven't told your sister yet, so I need you to go downstairs, and you cannot say anything to her. I need you to be strong for her. When you get to your auntie's house, I will call and tell her. And I'm like, Dad, and he's like, Jimmy, and I said, okay, Dad. So I get up, and I go down the elevator, and my sister's there. She's like, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? How's Mom? And I go, don't worry, Tolu, will be fine. And the whole time, I know my mother's dead. But at the same time, I didn't want to let my sister know. And so we're driving to her house, and I'm, my sister's praying, and she's still hoping, and still, And then we get there, and then finally, my father calls. And my sister says, Dad, how is she? How's Mom? And I think he tells her, and I'll never forget it. It was one of those moments that stay in my mind. As soon as he told her, the first words that came out of her mouth was, Lord, I thank you for my mother's life. Lord, I thank you. She just literally started praying. And it was creepy. There's so many different dimensions to this story. My mother had told my sister, when you're giving birth to your first child, and I'm not there with you, know that God is there with you. And my sister's like, Mom, what are you talking about? No matter where you are in the world, when I'm having my child, you will fly, you will be there. She says, Tolu, listen, when you're having your first child and I'm not there with you. And she gave her scripture to read and she never read it. And then after this happened, she goes to find the scripture and it was Paul saying, dearly beloved, the time for me to depart now has come. And he was literally saying, and there's so many sides. Before she got on the plane, she was talking to her PA, who was one of the two people that survived. Only two, the Kelechi and her. And she was talking about each one of us, like our lives. Like, you see this, my son, he's going to be this, he's going to be great, he's going to be a preacher, and she was wondering, like, why is she giving like a eulogy? That's what she was thinking. Like, why is she taking the time to talk about each person individually? And they got on the plane, and my mom looks and tells them, change her seat, change her seat. And she said this with so much fervency, and her PA is like, no, I'm okay. She's like, no, you don't understand. Move there and don't move. She said, Bumi, sit there in this flight and all do not move. And she's thinking, have I done something wrong? And she's like, don't move. When the plane crashed, where she would have sat, that part exploded. And what saved her life was the seat that she was sat in. And the man next to her had died and kind of collapsed over her to absorb it. It was so many, and she says on the tarmac, it's weird because my mom was just a Jesus trooper to the end. In the plane when everybody's panicking, she's over there telling everybody, because there were kids on that flight as well from school, and she's telling everybody it's okay, and everybody's praying. She's saying, Jesus, Jesus. On the tarmac, she says you could hear her still saying Jesus, and and it was hard for me because I was like, at the point when she would go, there was no family around. I had one or two options. It's those moments, those are those crossroads you come to in life. I could either say, you know what, screw it, middle finger to God, you lied, she spent her whole life for you, she gave her life. The reason why she died was because she went to preach. She didn't have to. And because she was always working. So it was either saying, I'm done with you. I had one or two options, run away from God or run to God. And I literally was at that crossroad. And I thought to myself, I felt like God was saying to me, I felt like a soldier that had been beaten. It's like, get up, soldier, get up. And he said to me again, that was your biggest fear. Now that's happened, you're fearless. Now what else can anyone throw at you anymore? And I made decisions like, you know what? I might as well run to him. So in that moment, I chose to say, you know what, God, I'm going to choose. And I understood what faith, see, faith isn't trusting when you understand. Because that's what people make the mistake of thinking. If I understand, then it's not faith. If I told you to jump off a building and you saw a net, that's an insurance, because you see that there's a net there. So if I jump, it's because there's insurance that it will catch me, as opposed to if I tell you jump and you see no net, then you jump. That's faith, because now there's no insurance. And I was like, Lord, I choose to trust you even though I do not understand. I do not understand how. I do not understand why. But I choose to believe you and believe that all things will work together, And so I chose to run to him and cling to him in that time. And literally, I felt like God was talking to me. It's like, listen, it's easy to trust people with the good times. And we're looking for people who are with us, not in the good times, but in the bad times. And it's like, can I trust you with pain? Can I trust you with the hard things of life? And that's what happens, because you look for people that are your ride or die. When things are good, everybody's there. But in those, God is like, a lot of people come and we've made in my ATM, and God bless me, God do for me. As long as you're doing for me, I'm riding for you. Yeah. But when things happen that we don't expect, do you still love me? Not because of what I can give you, but because of who I am, right? And, it was a process for me. And, so I chose to believe, and it's been, one of those things, yes, you have your moments when you hear of people passing, and then I lost my grandma in a similar way. Like, the two most important moments in my life, I lost them. My mom, it was my mother's mom as well. I spoke to her, she was good. I was leaving the States. Before I could get to Nigeria, she was in a coma. What do you mean she was fine? I was about to buy her jewelry, and before I land, she's dead. And I'm like, Lord, not again, right? Like, this is the same, but it's been a process, and it's taught me a lot, to deal with it. What moments? Everything, because everything in life is bittersweet. She wasn't there for my graduation. She was so involved in who I was dating, she never got to meet my wife. She wasn't there on my wedding day. She wasn't there for the birth of my child. She will never, I feel bad for my daughter, because I feel like she's being cheated. Not because, my father is married, and bless Pastor Namti, she's an amazing woman, but I feel like you hear of my mom, but you would never really know. You don't get to have her as grandma, and how she would have loved you and doted on you, and and I say this all the time. I say, I feel like if my mother was alive, I'd be a better man. And that's a deep statement. I feel, in so many ways, I think in so many things, that I've gone through since I lost her. I don't know, I just feel she was my cheerleader. She was you could do anything. She meant a lot, and I say that a lot. So I miss her in every moment of life, every achievement, everything. I lost her in college, so every moment, and everyone I meet seems to have a personal story of how she impacted them. And it's just like, man, and then she would tease me. I couldn't travel with her because people didn't know she had grown kids. And so we were walking on the streets of London. I would try to grab her waist. She's like, you can't do that, Jimmy. They don't know that you're my son. I'm like, I don't care, you're my mother. Or we'll travel, and I'll try to go into her. She's like, Jimmy, you can't stay in the same room as me. I'm like, oh, Mom, I'm your son. She's like, doesn't matter. They knock on my hotel door, and they see this grown man with his shirt off, answering the door. Scandal, Pastor People, who is this unidentified young man? But I miss her in every way.
It's my relationship with my father was very different from what I would presume most people had, because most people never called their fathers their best friends. Most of the people who were my friends were scared of their dad. Right. Every time we were in a friend's house and we heard their father's horn, I don't know why every father has to horn, especially on campus when there was no gates, but it was like as if I'm back, and that I'm back was something that every father did, and most of the time you would see the trepidation that will hit the kids, either for stuff they did or stuff they didn't do. Whichever one it is, daddy's back. But in my case, it was completely different, My father was my guy, he was, I couldn't even say that he was my guy because he was everybody's guy. He was not, I mean, we were just 3 siblings, right? So my brother and my sister. My brother's 4 years older than me. My sister's 3 years older. And then there was me. So yeah, I was the third of 3. Don't call me the last, or the baby. I never, but also because my father never treated me like a child. I mean, he would speak to me like a friend to a friend. And so for instance, when my father was passed on, it was a very shocking moment because he was ill on a Saturday and he was gone by Wednesday. And I remember that when they brought me in to the place where they announced to me that, they apparently had been like a family meeting on, how do we tell this one? Because we know this relationship. My uncle said to me that, maybe you didn't know, and he didn't realize I did. So he said to me, your father was not just your best friend. Apparently you were your father's best friend. And just before my father passed on, he had actually told one of my uncles, right, I need you to watch this boy for me. He said, he's the only one, he needs to go to military school. Because my father said to my uncle, I don't know how to deal with him. I just don't know. He's too, whatever he wants, he's going to get. So you can imagine that kind of person. And then one day, they tell me that my father is gone. And they said to me, this was what I was told, that I just jumped and screamed. And literally was as if my head hit the roof. And I don't know how tall the roof of the house would be. But this is an 11-year-old boy, so it must have been so. But whatever it was like as if I leapt up. And by the time I came down, I was out. I can't remember that moment anymore. And then the other thing that was very traumatic for me was that when my father's, when they were going to do the line in state, right, and I didn't want to see his body. Because I only wanted to see him the way I knew him. Yeah. And I don't know why I was old enough to know that I didn't want to see that. But somehow one of my uncles, like, you have to come and honor your father, you have to pay him last respect. And I was screaming and saying, leave me alone. But literally, it dragged me there. And then I saw my father and I passed out again. Okay? So 2 times I passed out. But the thing that then happened was that and just very interesting. So my father he died on the 27th of September, and October, first week of October, or second week of October, I then had to go and resume in Command Secondary School, Ibadan, which my uncles wanted to be my father's wish, but they didn't realize how broken I was. And so where I would go to Command, and I did resume in Command Secondary School in 1982, and I would cry every day because I couldn't see anything else apart from my father's face lying in that coffin. Nobody could. I tried. There was a time that my cry was not about just the fact that he was dead. It was about the fact that I can't continue. I can't keep up with this. You know what I mean? And what I found out was that somehow over time I learned to deal with it and move on in life. But what I decided was that I was never going to go through that pain again. So I never wanted another father figure in my life ever again. Well, my mom never remarried, yeah? But my uncles were trying to be father to me, and they were great guys, But I was on guard. And I was on guard for every man, right? So I couldn't draw close to any father figure. And so I didn't even want to learn from anybody for the sake of just in case I go and love you and then you leave me again. And I remember there was a day that, my pastor, Pastor Paul Adefrasing, had called me to his house and he said to me, I want you to tell me about your father. And I was like, what? And he said to me, I've been trying to draw you in, but you wouldn't come in. And I think that maybe God must have hinted him that there's something there. So I'll tell you this very special one. So I never could see God as a father. I could see him as God. I could relate with him as God. I could respect him as God, even when I started walking with him. But one particular day, God said to me, I want you to know I'm your father. And I was like, you know what? Leave that side alone. We can't do this. We can't do this father thing. I don't want this father thing. I just want, I don't want to be a son, okay? I just want to be, I want to walk with you. I want to be a servant. I want to be everything, but I don't want to be a son, you know? And so bottom line was, in being a father, when my sons came, I had a bit of it was a bittersweet thing. One part of me wanted to be the father that I could replay, because I really loved and enjoyed my time with my dad. So my sons became my best friends. But I also felt like I was going to leave early. So I believed, you know how this thing happens, and maybe somehow every time people see you and they think you're charismatic, they think you're smart, you're brilliant, you're a good talker, you're just like your dad, you're just like your dad. And so the concept of my dad has never left me, but almost always put in the context of good things happening. So anytime I did something brilliant, they will say you're like your dad. But what they didn't realize was that there was baggage coming with that reminder. So one of the biggest baggage that was coming with it was that my dad died at 42. I honestly believed I would never live to see my 43rd birthday. And one of the things people don't understand when people say to me, oh, you know, you supported your wife. It's such a very few men these days that support their wives to be everything. Well, actually, House of Tara was meant to be my life insurance. In a way that I knew in my head I wasn't going to live long. So I wanted to make sure that I built around her something that will sustain her and the kids when I was gone. I was dead sure that I was going to die before I was 43. So I was so sure. So all I was doing was I kept on saying, don't touch a kobo. Don't do anything. Whatever she needed to do, I will do. Anything I could do to help build House of Tara as quickly as possible. I didn't have time. I didn't have time. So this is the kind of thing, but you know what? I did pass 43. and on the day that I was turning 43, I was actually in Warri, and something really strange happened, guys. So I'd gone the night before midnight, I'd gone to speak at Crown FM, and literally were there with the founder of the till almost midnight, and then we were coming back, and here I was. I knew it was going to be midnight. I was about to cross it over, and a car started driving towards my car at midnight, and the guy who was driving me, right, was looking at the car. And I was saying to him, Shuli, do you see that car coming? He said, yes. The guy, then he said to me, do you think he's drunk? And in me, I knew, no, he's not drunk. He's my assassin. He's coming to get me. Wow. No, because I had faith that I was going to die before 43. So now, do you know, this was such a strong, this guy, Shuli couldn't move the steering. At the moment of impact, I turned the steering, and the side mirror of our car hit the side mirror of the other car coming. And the guy never stopped.
Wow.
So that was number one. Got to the hotel, and I started running a fever. And I started burning up till about 3 a.m. And I knew I could feel the taste of death. And I started praying in tongues. And at one point in time, I prayed so hard. And I called out, Jesus! And bam! The thing left. I broke out in sweat less than 5 minutes later, and that was it. So look, whether it was because there was going to be a generational cycle that was going to replay itself, or because I had so much faith and expectation, and the expectation of the righteous cannot be dashed. So whatever it was, I had opened a gateway, Whether the portal was opened by my father and was going to play back over my life, or it was opened by my faith, but I had opened a portal. And that, in a way, played out. So in terms of elderly relationships, I didn't want any father figure. And it was only later, I mean, I'm talking about the last 3 years, that I've started to love my uncle. These are guys that have done everything to love me. And I couldn't love my uncles. I could deal with them, I could relate with them, but I couldn't love them. I couldn't love any man that was older than me that could be a father figure. Then I started to get people like Dr. Christopher Kola and then receive them. And then now I've gone past that one, no longer scared about. So now I'm just loving my kids and I'm being the best father ever. And we're doing this forever, actually.
The truth is, there's only one thing that's guaranteed in life, and that's death. Like the moment you're born, you're in the race. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing in life that is promised. And, you know, I think God has been very amazing to me and my family because I've lost close people to me, but not in my family. I've lost, you know, one of the closest people I lost lately, about 2-3 years ago, a couple days after my birthday, was my cousin. And when he died, like, that was just like a wake-up call, like, bruh, there's nothing you can be doing in life that is so important to God that He can't take you. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, this was, okay, so he passed away exactly a month after his brother got married. And, you know, this cousin to me was like a brother, you know, because I never really had brothers. So when he passed away, I was kind of like, wow, like, this was somebody who, okay, so I was going to South Africa for an award show, and a couple days before I went to SA, they were like, oh, you know, this guy, I saw this guy, Blink told me, I saw this guy in the hospital. I was like, normal headache or whatever, Panadol, 2 days or 1 day, he'll be out, or even that same day. And I got to SA and we're working, shooting commercials and stuff, and I kept getting emails from my family members, like it was a chain of emails just saying, oh, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, they've diagnosed this. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? You know, like, how can all these things be said about somebody that just a month ago, me and him were hosting his brother's wedding, and he has 2 kids, you know? And the day of the award show, we were at the after party, and I was just getting WhatsApp messages, and bang, he passed. I was like I almost felt like puking, you know, right where I was, because I'm like, God, this makes no sense. And at that point, I was still in the world. So I was just wondering, like, I think for me, it made me reflect on the fact that this guy is young, has 2 children, they're relatively young, has a wife, and just like that, you go into hospital, less than a week, you're dead. You know, it kind of, when I reflect on it now, I just appreciate every day. Because the kind of conversion I had was so radical that I had no choice but to dig deep into God and say, who are you? You know, and then also understand the fact that He has no favorites. So don't ever think because you're working for God or you're reading your Bible every day or you're telling people about Him that nothing can happen to you.
I don't know why we're talking about death, right? I also thought I was going to die at age 40. Why? Because historically, every man in my family died around age 38, 39, 40. Now, and that was born out of my surname. I changed my surname. Talking about, you know, this father-son journey, right? My old surname is Kupolui. It meant death takes an eminent person. So my father used to be the financial controller of Dunlop. And at that point, you know, I mean, Dunlop, right, was a Fortune 500 company. And I'm sure it still is, right? And so my first brother, who designed the Muson, right, he was a top-notch structural engineer, died around 40. And it always is one accident. So my father, the first Nigerian plane crashed, Nigerian Airways. The plane didn't land. My first brother was in a car in front of Igbobi on Ikorodu Road. It just ran into a stationary truck, right? My other brother also almost, died because of complications with his heart, right? So at that point, I went home and, I started to then thought I was thinking, and God says to me, change your name. The bulk stops here. Because I was fast approaching, close to that age. And, you have that fear that, are you going to make it? Are you two going to go? And all of that. But at the time when my brother was going through, we had lost my first brother. My second brother was going through his heart complications, I just said, you know what, I have the power to turn this whole thing around. And, and I want to talk about power of names, right? That which you call yourself, you become. That which you declare manifests. I mean, who calls himself death takes an eminent person? And at that point, I was becoming very well known.
Yes.
And I was becoming afraid. And I just said to myself, guess what, man? I'm not going to answer this name again. And I changed my name to Olushola. And I told my family, man, this is the instruction that I'm getting. I think we need to do this. And yours truly, everybody agreed. And then we changed it and everything changed. So, so people will ask me, so who is your father? Which Olushola is your father? To that extent, right? I mean, I say to people, I'm sorry, I have no father. Hey, you are not related to any Olushola. This one is the first generation. Wow. So in my own life, I can look back, not regretting any single thing, right? Have I become a good man? I think so. Am I the best man that I can be? No. I'm still work in progress. But who do I model my life after? I model my life after the Heavenly Father. I mean, to the extent that I call him Papa. Yeah. I mean, I've studied David, his relationship with God. I've studied Solomon, his relationship with God. I've studied Abraham, his relationship with God. Moses, his relationship with God, especially Jesus, his relationship with God. And I try to live and have that kind of relationship with God, such that move this cup, I'm waiting. Wear this today, I'm waiting. When they send me an invitation, I ask him, what is a 411? Now, that one you're not going to speak.
What did you say about this?
Oh, I changed my flight now, now. Once I got this, I'm supposed to be in Abuja at this moment. And he said to me, you're supposed to be on this program. Yeah. Change your flight, everything else will change. I mean, how can they be talking about brotherhood? And they invite you, and you rather be somewhere else? No way.
And the incredible thing about this thing is, especially for maybe young people, that sometimes, they wonder whether this thing is actually true or real. Because I look back and I'm asking myself, would I have been a better person today if my father, who by the way is alive somewhere, who might be watching this.
Also, your father is alive?
I think so. The last time I checked.
So why was he never in your life?
It's some of these things are very sensitive, I was born out of wedlock. So I was a child that really was very close to being aborted. This close. I mean, actually, very close. I think maybe they even tried. I was very close, but God said no. The story is it's a long story, but eventually, almost instructed this one you must not take out. And my great grandmother said, just deliver him, give him to me, and you can go and do whatever you want to do. I will raise this one. And she raised me up until I was 14. By the way, that was a deep loss for me, because that's the only person I ever knew. That was my father. That was my mother. At that time, she was everything. And interesting, before she died, was that for our last 3 months, she chased me away. This was somebody who loved me with everything, everything. I mean, she sold everything to educate me to a point, to take care of everything, gold, silver, land. I mean, she had cocoa, everything. And then I just realized that she would lock the door and lock me out and just would not talk to me. I did nothing wrong. She just, and people used to wonder that this child, if you die like this, he's going to pass out, because there was just too much. The same way you were with, say, like your father, that was my own, like, father or mother, you know. And then so that went on for like 3 months, very strange period. So I would end up just sleeping with the neighbor somewhere just because Mama is angry with me. I didn't know why. You know, and then she called me one day and then she told me to kneel down, put her hands on me and prayed. I just kept declaring the prayers that I couldn't understand at that time, but I now do, you know, very deep prayers and speaking into your future and all of that. And then she was done, and then again told me to leave. And then 7 days later, I remember walking into the room to go and say hello to her in the morning before I went to school, and I just saw her on where she normally kneels down to pray, and I called, tried to wake her up, and she was dead. I was 14. That was the first dead body I ever saw. I've never shared. I've never shared. Why am I sharing this on TV?
This is what Kemi does to you.
Oh, goodness. That was the first, you know, and I stood there for about maybe 1 hour. And I was just looking at her. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was 14. I was 13 going to 14. So it was 1993 going to 1994. And I was there just staring at her. Where do I go? Who do I call? Who do I talk to? There was, you know. So I think later on I finally I didn't cry. Because I felt that somehow she had detached me from her because of all the things she was doing in the last, you know, apart from the last thing that she did was praying for me. Right. You know. So I started to look after myself almost around that. She literally forced me to be independent before she left. So I was making food for myself. I had my own room. We had a house, so there were a lot of rooms. So I could stay in anywhere I wanted. So I went to go and create my own room. Fine, if you don't want me to sleep in your room, I will create my room. So I created my room. I put Michael Jackson posters everywhere. You know, so I was independent and I was happy. My friends would come to the room, would play in the room, and nobody would say to come in at any time. So I was fine. But anyway, she died, and I went to go and call the neighbors that, you know, I think Mama is dead. And what do you mean? What do you know about that? Anyway, so they are around, and cut the long story short, she was buried, and then I had to go and move in with my aunt. And so to your question is, I mean, I really maybe he's watching, maybe, but there's never been a relationship. There's never been.
Would you like to? I mean, talk to question. Are you curious at all? If you had the opportunity, would you be interested? Do you wake up, I wonder what he looks like. I wonder if I look like him.
No. I you know, you've built such a solid relationship with God that you don't even want to disrupt that.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's too late. Maybe I would have done that. Maybe I would have done that when I was 20. You know, 16 years ago. I would have done that at 25. Maybe I would have done that when I was trying to decide who I was going to get married to. Yeah. You know, what you're trying to be as a leader. You know, maybe I would have done that when I had like critical life questions, you know. But now I feel that God and I are cool, man. You know, so I'm a ride or die guy. You know, I don't want to disrupt it. And that's why, again, like you, I am very careful who I call father. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely careful. I mean, you know, my spiritual father, you know, Pastor E. Adeboye, for me, that was an instruction that this is somebody that I draw tremendous grace and just spiritual guidance from. So for me, that's so people that I call father, they're not even people. I don't. It's not something. They're not. No.
You know, speak from my own personal experience, and so my father died when I was 2, right? So literally never known any father. My mom brought me up. And then fast forward, I gave my life, and Pastor Taiwo became my spiritual father, and Pastor Bimbo became my spiritual mother, right? And, you know, I was head of protocol and security, and I went everywhere with them. So Pastor Bimbo was going to London, Tony Suba and I will go with her, you know, and then this happened. So, and for the few days that, you know, they were looking for her, we were at the house every night and praying. And then we got the news, and everybody's world stopped. And so you had a question, you know, Lord, if you really loved her, why would you take her this way? You know, why would you let her die this way? She's an icon. And people had questions, you know. And, you know, those kind of questions God does not answer, because his name is Kabiosi. You know, you cannot question him. And then in those moments, you know, God started to speak to me. So he says, look at Job. And God broke it down. Now check this out. The sons of God gathered. The sons of God gathered with their father. And the devil gathered with them. And then God asked the devil, where are you coming from? Says, to and fro. And God asked him, to and fro, and you know, see my pikin, Job, as in the devil had no knowledge that Job existed. But God brought the devil's attention to Job. So, the devil went on his business, to and fro, and checked this guy out. So, this guy loves God. This guy eschews evil. This guy is upright. And goes back on another day that the sons of God gathered.
And nobody stopped him from coming in.
Yes.
Yeah.
He had a gate pass.
Yes. They said the sons of God gathered, and he was there.
He had a gate pass.
So the devil tabled the matter. I've seen this guy, Jobo. This guy love you, die. This guy, if you give me permission to torment him, afflict him, shakara him, let's see, this guy will deny you. And God says, go. But don't touch anyone's life. And so he goes. He takes everything. His possessions. You know? Then he goes back again. I say, this guy, I love you, die. Say, but this guy is not denying you. Say, let me torture him further. And God gave him permission, and he took everything else. But God says to him, but his life, you cannot take. Wow. Now, I mean, when God asked me those questions and opened up that conversation, I was blown away. You know that he says, I give permission. I'm the one that has the exclusive right to life and death. And life and death is a cycle. Nobody begs me for life, I give it. And so death is part of life, but you can't see it. Because life is eternal. And the one that we spend here is minuscule. So then again he asked me, what happened to Job after? Says, according to the Bible, his life was twice better than it was in the beginning. Then he asked me, then I said, but why do people have to die funny deaths? He said, you know what, it means nothing to me. All that matters is that your real self, your spirit, and my breath, I call it back. This thing, earth suit, this capsule that you dwell in, must, you know, something must
Reject you from
expel your spirit and your soul. So whether it's you sleep, do people die in sleep? Yes. Do people die in the shower? Yes. Do people die in hospital? Yes. It says the manner of death means nothing. And it says no one ever accepts death. So whether you die at age 1, age 2, age 30, age 40, really and truly, who can accept it? Then the last thing was, how old was Jesus when he died? And what did I put my own self through? And then he says to me, what are you going to do with this death? I mean, I went literally everywhere with her. And, I mean, I just had to make a decision. And I said, you know what? That legacy is going to move on. It's going to continue. And that's when I made my commitment and said, you know what? This legacy must move on. This thing called family, this thing called marriage, this thing called, turning people's lives around, man, it must have meaning. Everything that I've learned, right, I must apply it in my own way. And so the truth of the matter is, Pastor Beams is not dead. She still lives on. Ooh. And there's so many of us. Now, talking about, understanding spiritual things, physical things, right? We can't use physical things to try and understand spiritual things. We need some depth and personal relationship with God for us to be able to understand that there is kairos and there's chronos. And we cannot live our lives, measure our lives, count our lives based on chronological time. It's all about kairos. Is God going to meet you and say to you, welcome my good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord in perpetuity. When you meet with him, regardless of whether you meet with him after 20, 60, 70, 80, chronological time is like a drop in an ocean when it comes to eternity. What we've got to really, really focus on is developing that personal and intimate relationship with him, 1. 2, is understanding what our purpose is, or what the purpose for the life that he has given us is. 3, we live it in reckless abandonment, following him, listening to him, being guided by him. And then you find fulfillment on this side of heaven. And then you learn, about your walk with him and your relationship with him. And then and you are guaranteed that, when you transition, you're going to transition as a son. And I'm not being gender specific. You transition as a son and you're with him in perpetuity. And, that is the key for me. So when we talk about death, it's important that we understand that, life and death, they're the same cycle. And God does not, the devil has no power to kill anyone. Unfortunately, we give too much power to him. He has no power to kill anyone. The person's time is up. And, before that, unfortunately, something has to take you. And there are many means of exit. So we want to move from here to Ikeja, right? I can walk. I can go on Keke Mape. I can go on Okada. I can go in a car, Jeep. In fact, helicopter. Yep. We have to have an exit. And that's how, I've been able to handle death. Because guess what? You are going to die. You are going to die. Say amen. Amen. You are going to die. There is nobody that is not going to die. But what I say to people is don't let death cheat you. Yeah, exactly. Plan for your exit. That's right. So when do you want to die? Plan towards it. Do what you need to do. Because if you know that you have only 20 years left, right. Then make the best. Make those 20 years count. Stop counting the 20 years. But what I find is a lot of people fail to want to ask that question, Lord, when am I going to die? What do you want me to do between now and then? You know, because if you do not make that bold move and at least have an idea, right, of how much time you have left, you will never make the sacrifice. And you know, that's the attention that I want to bring to everyone that is listening to this. Look, plan your exit. Don't let death cheat you. Do everything that you need to do within the time that you have left so that you can find fulfillment. So that at the end, right, of the time that you spend here, when you transition, God can invite you back home and you can spend eternity with him. And that's really what I'd like to say about this.
You know, there's something that, taking from where Lanre took it, you know, when Dr. Miles Monroe died, that was tough for a lot of people. I mean, it was like as if they took someone. Now, I never saw him as a father, so I couldn't explain the loss that I felt with him because I didn't really know him. He wasn't somebody, you know, but there was a pain that was hard to describe. But one of the things that God then taught me as I went to him to try to figure out this pain was that he said to me, my son, there's a difference between breathing and living. And one of the things he shared with me was that there were many people who were breathing but were not living, and there were people who will stop breathing but will never stop living. And then God showed me the difference between the late and the great. And he said to me, someone is late whenever the impact of his life has ceased. Whether he's breathing or he has stopped breathing. Most people, the impact of their lives cease when they stop breathing. But there are some people who are alive today and they are late.
Come on.
Do you understand? And I'm not talking about whether they are late for a meeting. They are late, dead. They're like not leaving. They are not leaving. They're not fulfilling purpose. They're not living for a reason. They're just existing. It's the passage of time, like Lanre said, you know. And so the most important thing when Lanre was saying prepare for your exit was that in a way in my head was transition from a place of breathing to a place of impact. To the point where that impact must be institutionalized, to the point where when you stop breathing, you don't stop living. And therefore you become great. I have never heard anybody say the late Pastor Bimbo. It's just the great Pastor Bimbo. You understand what I'm saying? It's like people talk about her like as if she's still right here. You listen to her messages and they're so relevant, like she could have preached it yesterday. You know what I mean? So people like that stepped from the boundaries of humanity and they were living in eternity on earth. That's why they're timeless. That's why they're classic. That's what we're trying to do, and that's what I'm asking everybody that can. You know what? Get to the point where, number one, you start living. Then number two, institutionalize your living so that it can continue when you stop breathing. Go from being the late to becoming the great while you're on earth.
I've told my story. Kola has told this story. You know, he never had anyone. You know, not that I knew who my father was at age 2. So, you know, this brings a question. So, you know, what if your father is never there? He's physically there, but, you know, he's absent. Right. Can you turn out okay? Mm-hmm. You've got to take your destiny in your hands as a man. You've got to take personal responsibility for your life at any age. You know, if there are men that are listening to this program, right, by God's grace, I've turned out right. Kola has turned out right. And so there are loads of men out there that will give the excuse, my father never loved me. My father was never there. You know, the question, and I'm sorry it sounds insensitive, so what? Right? We found the father of fathers. And if you find the father of fathers, then really and truly, he can nurture you to become another father that will start a new generation. So please, it's important that we don't make excuses, because I found that human natures are such that, you know what, I want to blame someone. I want to blame where I am for, I want to blame something for where I am. Look, we have weaknesses, we have strengths. We're all work in progress, but by any measure, right, we can stand next to any man who had a father. I'm sure we will stand shoulder taller than other men that have fathers. So wherever you found yourself, the most important thing is make the best out of your life as a man. Because the challenge that we find as Africans, as Nigerians, is we're creating societies without real men.
Yeah.
And, we need to, first of all, take that personal responsibility to nurture ourselves to become real men, and nurture other men to become real men.
I feel like the moment you take that glory, that is God's glory, it's a very dangerous game to.
So for me, I didn't doubt the Bible, but I questioned a lot of things in the Bible.